Welcome back to All of Your Stories. I'm your host, Hava Gurevich, and today I'm joined by Seth Leary, a multidisciplinary artist, entrepreneur, and the creative force behind Gallery 1624, a tiny gallery with a big presence. Seth's path is anything but linear. From launching a print shop at 21 to starting a school for gifted children to creating traveling museum exhibitions seen across the country, his career is a series of bold experiments in building something from nothing. We talk about what it means to follow curiosity instead of a blueprint, how he approaches both art and teaching with a sense of openness and play, and why success for him is simply waking up and wanting to keep going. And yes, we also get into the story behind the exclamation point in his name. Seth, welcome to the episode. Now, quick word from our sponsor, and then we'll get right back to the show. When I started selling my art, I had absolutely no idea how to actually turn it into a business, a professional business. And then I came across art storefronts, and that was a game changer. I've been a customer now for years, and they've been instrumental every step of the way of helping me succeed. I have a gorgeous, powerful commerce website. I have marketing tools and a membership to a community that is very supportive and teaches me how to succeed as an artist. Check them out, artstorefronts.com, and tell them Hava sent you. All right, welcome back to All of Your Stories. And I have today as my guest, Seth Leary. Seth is a multidisciplinary artist, entrepreneur, and educator. And we met, what, like 2 decades ago?
Yeah, probably about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we met when we were both working in the museum service industry, and I'm excited to talk about that a little bit. But first of all, Seth, welcome to I Love Your
Thank you very much.
Stories.
Lovely to be here.
And why don't we start with you just saying a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Sure, yeah. Well, yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, I consider myself an artist and an entrepreneur. My career path has been extremely circuitous. I mean, I've done a lot of things. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm actually back in my hometown, which I swore I would never do. Um, I'm in Springfield, Illinois currently, and that's where this lovely 1931 English Tudor Revival house that I live in is located. And then I was actually, when I was first born, my parents were renting a house maybe half a mile from where I'm sitting right now. So, but my path has taken me all the way out to Seattle and down to South Florida and all of a sudden back here. Yeah, so um, my father was I grew up in a household with a couple of scientists. My father was uh, was a museum curator. My parents are still living, but they're of course retired. Um, he was a museum curator at the Illinois State Museum, which is just a few minutes from here. Everything's just a few minutes away in Springfield. Um, so I grew up kind of behind the scenes at a museum. I got to see I spent more time, in the laboratories and all that than I did, wandering the galleries. Um, so yeah, so I got to see that, and I got to see what it was like to, he was a museum curator and a scientist. He's a paleobotanist,
That's really
and
cool.
it was
That's
very cool. Yeah, it was very cool. And but he's also an artist. I come from my grandmother his mom was an artist, my dad's an artist. And so I just kind of grew up in this household of, creativity where it's like, oh, I'm just going to make a thing, and he's very handy. He's a good craftsman. And so I learned at his knee, ever since I got my first tool kit for Christmas when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, and so he taught me how to use a handsaw, and I was just building stuff ever since I was little. I mean, it was crazy the things I was doing. Taking high C juice cans and using metal shears and cutting them up when I was in third grade and making a telegraph. set, I don't know. It was kind of an amazing little childhood in many respects. So there was always just, wood and wire and metal and screws and nails and stuff just hanging around so I could just start making stuff. Um, and I think that sort of gave me this sense of there's no barrier to entry. It's just like, hey, other people do it. I'm gonna do a thing. I mean, I haven't tried surgery, haven't built any aircraft, but it's just like, well, I don't know, somebody did it. I can do that probably. So that was sort of the mindset. So I studied art education when I went to the University of Illinois many, many, many years ago. Um, but right after I graduated college, that my first wife and I we started a copy shop, a print shop in downtown Springfield. Again, just right down the street from where we're sitting right now. Um, and I'd always kinda wanted to own a business in downtown Springfield, and so when, we did that because that was a field that she was in and whatever, there's reasons, but anyway, we just decided, we're like, "Hey, we're gonna do this." And I was like, "How hard can it be?" There's no overhead, you just like we just rent the copier, we buy paper as needed, it's like, it seems super simple, and, and keep in mind I'm 21 years old, so, I'm just a punk ass kid, but I was like, "Pfft," you know, I, I I was blissfully naive, it was great not knowing, what I was getting myself into. I was like, this can't be so hard, so we borrowed, what did we borrow? I think we borrowed like $3,000 from each of our parents. So we had $6,000 to start a business, which, by the way, folks, I learned what undercapitalized meant very early. Um, so yeah, don't try to start a business um, with $6,000. Um, no matter how much enthusiasm you have. But anyway, um, so yeah, I mean, we signed a lease on a space downtown. I called up Xerox, and Becky was like, "Tell them we want a Xerox 1090," which at the time was their top of the line duplicator. The really big one that you see in what used to be called Kinko's, now it's FedEx Office. But those giant copiers, and they thought we were joking, and so they put the new kid on the phone. I'm like, "No, for real, I wanna rent that." Well, I had to have my dad co-sign the lease on this copier because I was just some 21-year-old kid with no credit. And, yeah, but we opened this print shop in downtown Springfield in, like, I don't in a matter of, like, 2 weeks, we just cobbled it together. And I asked, the guy was like, you need 220, power to run this copier." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, pff, that's totally no problem. Yeah, absolutely. We definitely have that." And so then I called a friend of mine who was an electrician. I'm like, "Hey, Ron, hypothetically, let's say I needed a 220 circuit to to power a copier. What would I need?" You know? And so he came down to my shop, bless his heart, and he was like, "Well, first you need to put an additional breaker box in here," and I'm like, "Okay, breaker box, uh-huh, and then you need the," I'm like, "And what gauge wire would that be?" "Uh-huh, uh-huh." And so he's telling me how to do this. I'm like, again, I'm thinking, "Hey, people do this. Ron's an electrician. I'm not an electrician, but how hard can it be?" And so I bought all this stuff, and I went back to this shop we had just leased the day before, and I shut off the power from the street, you know, and I'm just cutting holes and screwing in wires and drilling holes in the wall and running it all out to the room where we were going to put this machine, put the outlet in for it and turn the power back on, and no fires started. The building didn't burn down, you know. So I was like, it's probably fine. And sure enough, few days later, and we opened the business without the copier, by the way. We had people dropping off orders. We are like, "We're gonna get a print
What were
copier soon. Don't worry. When you come back in a few days, your work will be ready." And Xerox shows up. They put the copier together. They hit the power button, and boom, power's right up. I'm like, I'm an electrician. Add that to the resume. So we did that for a few years. And it was great. It was really cool. But we grew too fast. We within a couple of years, we were in the top 10 highest grossing print shops in our county. We were doing, I mean, this was, keep in mind, this was like 1987, and so we were doing like quarter million dollars in sales based on a 9,000 or a $6,000 investment. We were in over our head. We were undercapitalized. I quickly found myself underwater with all these lease payments. So anyway, after 4.5 years, it imploded, unfortunately. I had, leveraged too much and just couldn't keep it going. So the marriage, the business, the whole thing went bust. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot. Everything's a learning experience. I leave Springfield and move to the Seattle area, the beautiful Pacific Northwest.
What took you there?
A girl. Everything. It's always about a girl. So if I'm vague, just assume there's a girl involved. Um, yeah. What can I say? I follow my heart. I'm I'm like that. I follow my heart. Anyway, so yeah, so I went out there and keep in mind I had this teaching degree in my pocket, that I hadn't really used very much yet. And so I get out there and I thought I was going to be an art teacher. Well, they didn't have very many art teaching positions. And so I started writing a newsletter to some friends and it morphed into a business plan. And suddenly I'm designing a business plan for a school for gifted kids.
Wow.
Um, yeah, as growing up as a gifted kid myself in a school district that didn't really have, back then they didn't have much,
Mm.
for kids like me, and so, I mean, I remember in third grade, it's like I was done with my work. My teacher just had me put my head down on my desk so I would be quiet.
So it's almost like advocacy for your past child self.
Yes, exactly. You're right. You're not wrong there. You're exactly right. It's yeah, I kind of was advocating for my for my younger self. But by then I had two stepchildren, um, who are extremely capable kids themselves, um, and had one on the way that was my progeny. And so, I was like, you know what? I'm going to open this one room schoolhouse, And so I looked around at external places to do it and then landed on, well, how about we turn our dining room and our living room into a school? And my wife was like, yeah, that's actually a great idea because then you're not signing a lease somewhere. Um, so yeah, I started a school, and turns out that if you have a teaching certificate, you don't need a whole lot else to start a school. Basically, as long as you're a legitimate teacher, you can start a private school. Um, Started out with our two kids plus I think three or four paying students as well. Um, and so yeah, I mean, I could fit my whole school just around one little table in our living room, and it was pretty awesome. I'm really quite proud of the curriculum model that I developed for that. Um, I advertised it heavily. The plan was, okay, let's try to grow this and, maybe have 100 students. The following year, I ended up buying the house down at the bottom of the hill from us, just a block away. I bought a house and converted the whole house into the school. Um, but it never had more than 14 students. And part of the problem I found out was parents' expectations were, well, schools surely must have more students than that,
Mm.
you know? And so I probably had 100 families call up and be like, oh, your school sounds great, but it's too small. It's like, well, if you would just send your kid here, then it wouldn't be as small. Then it would have a 15th kid and a 16th kid.
So you ran a private school for gifted
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
And then what?
Oh, well, another recession hit. And so, it didn't take very many parents to have to cut back on their budgets for my school to go from almost viable to not at all viable. So yeah, I had to stop doing that. And I puttered around with a couple of other things, but then I thought, what do I really what do I want to do really, And I thought, ever since I was a kid, I just thought, man, designing museum exhibits would really be cool. Um, and I
So,
thought, well, I don't have credentials to like apply at a museum. And also, even though my dad worked in his entire career at the Illinois State Museum, he was always grumbling about it, you know. And I thought, I think I don't want to work at a museum. Probably I just don't want to work for somebody in general because I haven't spent much of my career working for someone. I owned my own print shop. I owned my own school.
yeah.
So I haven't had a boss very much, and I kind of like that. And so I was like, how can I? And I thought, well, should I build my own museum? I was like, no, I had a brick and mortar business times two. It's like, I'm going to spend all my time worrying about HVAC systems and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I thought I don't want brick and mortar. I don't want to work for somebody. I can't convince somebody to just hire me freelance. I thought I just need to be able to make exhibits without having a building, you know, and without anyone telling me what exhibit to make. I want to do whatever I want. And I was like, wait a minute, traveling museum exhibitions, that's a thing. I thought I could just make whatever exhibit I want and then rent it out to people, and no one can tell me what to do. And I don't have to have my own museum. Um,
So just for those who are listening who have never heard of the term, because um, I realized that I didn't know anything about traveling exhibitions and what happens behind the scenes until I started working in that industry. So the way I like to talk about it is people come to a museum and they see the show. They don't really think about like how does the show get there. Um, and if you're a curator and you're curating an exhibition, it can take months, if not years, to put together a show. But you know, the museum has shows constantly. So what do you do in the what do you do in the meantime? And one thing that most museums rely on are these temporary exhibitions that are like already put together. Everything's done. I think the term is turnkey. Yeah. So ours was two-dimensional photography in frames. Very simple. Um, yours was something completely different, so
hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's basically the model. And part of the beauty of it, supposedly, what it looks great on paper. It looks better on paper than it does in real life, it turns out. But on paper, it looks great because you build one product and then you rent it out over and over and over again. Um, and in fact, my very first exhibition did, the ROI, the return on my investment for that was incredible.
what
You
was
know,
it?
so when I first had this idea, hey, I'm going to make traveling exhibits, I thought, okay, well, what do I want my first one to be? It needs to be really good. I want it to be something that everyone's going to want, you know, and it can't be dinosaurs because everybody and their sister has a dinosaur exhibit. So I thought, okay, it's got to be super popular, something that everybody in the whole world wants to go see, but it's not dinosaurs. And I think I spent almost 3 years just pondering this, what can be my topic. I was just really hung up on what could it be. And and it hit me one day. I was like, wait a minute, treasure. It's like no one doesn't like treasure. If you walk into it, it's sort of the opposite of being in a theater yelling fire. If you go into a theater and yell treasure, everyone's going to be excited. You know,
Yeah.
they're all going to want to go, and they don't know what it is, because treasure means a lot of things and different things to different people, right? But you're not going to find anyone who's like, no, I don't want any treasure. That sounds terrible. I wouldn't want any of that. But so I thought, yeah, treasure's going to be the hook. That's going to be the thing. And the exhibition is going to be about how treasure means so many different things. So I designed it to be very modular, partly so that it would work in a variety of spaces, but also with this sort of interesting journey of topics. So the one that's sort of the most almost esoteric and hardest for most people to reach, but also the one that grabs people the most, perhaps, is sunken treasure.
Yeah.
People think, gold doubloons at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
I mean, and pirates and treasure chests. That we see that in popular culture all the time, right? But then I thought, well, also treasure in popular culture in itself is a topic. So I made an area specifically about treasure in popular culture, with all kinds of board games dating back to the 1930s, just,
Wow.
games and movies and TV shows and episodes of shows, just treasure, treasure, treasure. It's just, if you want to make a board game and you want to sell it, you just call it, Billy Bob's Treasure Hunt, because everybody wants a board game that says Treasure Hunt on it.
So it's when you say you're designing you design an exhibition, it starts with a concept,
Hmm.
and then there's actually a physical to it. Like you're
Hmm.
building, it's almost like building sets,
Yeah.
right? You're building sets. You're also putting together educational components, like maybe interactive audio, video, tactile things. The company was called N
Energy exhibit, spelled
Energy
NRG exclamation point, but
Exhibits.
pronounced energy.
Yes, Energy. And how long did you have that company?
So, so I started that around 2005. Um, I came up, of course, I like to tell people, if you're going to start a company, the first thing you need to have is enthusiasm. And the second thing is a logo. If you have enthusiasm and a logo, everything else will figure itself out, you know. It's like everybody's like, "Oh, have a business plan." I'm like, "Yeah, but really a logo, a cool logo and enthusiasm are really the best part. Make yourself a business card
Yeah.
and the rest will follow." Um, yeah, so I started it with just this one idea for an exhibition. And growing up with my dad, it's like I learned how to do all kinds of things. And so there's I mean, brain surgery and aircraft building aside, there's not much I don't feel capable of doing, you know. And if I don't know how to do it, I'll just learn how to do it. So yeah, so all the things in the exhibit I came out of my head pretty much. I got 3ds Max so I could learn how to do make 3D models, computer models, and 3D animation. Yeah,
So that is when I met you. Coincidentally, Art to Art also started in 2005. So,
yeah.
um, so how long did you have that company, and what happened next?
I mean, technically, I still have it,
Oh, okay.
um, but I no longer have any inventory. So the treasure exhibit. I mean, I designed it on the computer and made flyers. I mean, the first thing is make a logo, then make a flyer, you know, and And so I would pitch, I would go to conferences and I would have flyers for exhibits that didn't exist, you know. But because well, it's like why build it if no one's gonna rent it, you know?
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yes.
And so I mean, it was how I would vet it, It's like I mean, I thought if I thought the idea was really cool, I would come up with a basic premise for it, on a flyer. And I would say, hey, would you rent this exhibit? And if no one bit, then I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna
Yeah.
just file that flyer away, but if somebody did express interest, I was like, be like, oh, this will be available, whatever, a
Yeah.
year from now. And then I'd be like, okay, well, I guess I got a year to make an exhibit. And the treasure exhibit, I pitched it for a long time, and then somebody actually wanted it like within a few months. I was like, oh snap! I guess I'm building an exhibit really fast. And this was and it ended up being a 5,000 square foot exhibition, so it's big. But yeah, that was pretty intense. And of course, like 2 weeks before the exhibition was scheduled to ship, I got appendicitis and then pneumonia in the hospital. So that was really hard to get that one done. I had to call in a bunch of favors. I mean, you know, I had all my friends coming in, cutting boards and stuff.
I guess that's the other side of being an entrepreneur and being your own boss, is that it all falls on you.
Yes,
And
exactly. So yeah, I made a bunch of exhibitions over a period of several years, but none of them really performed as well as Treasure. And as probably have experienced too, over the last 20 years, what happens is that the marketplace gets more and more saturated with content, because we're all out there building and designing exhibits, but there's not more and more
A finite number of
venues.
museums,
The number
exactly.
of museums is not keeping pace with the number of
Right.
exhibits. So, everybody in our teeny tiny little industry, we started finding ourselves more and more often with stuff that was sitting on the shelves,
Mhm.
or in my case, in warehouses, And so around 2017 or 18, I decided, I'm going to mothball some of these exhibitions and try to work for somebody else, so I can have a steadier income because it just became really, really, really up and down, with these exhibits. Um,
So what
yeah.
brought
So,
you back to Springfield?
my parents are still here, so I was like, where can I go that's affordable?
Mm.
Yeah, it was a series of bad circumstances that got me back to Springfield. There was definitely nothing positive that brought me back here. Um,
Well, the one thing that you did do since you've been back is open your own gallery.
yes.
So let's
So,
talk about that.
yeah, for sure. So, I guess it was on Instagram I stumbled across this miniature art gallery up in the Chicago area. Um, and I was like, well, this looks like kind of like one of those little, take a book, leave a book, the little
Yeah.
free mini libraries that people have in their front yards on a post. And I was like, this guy has an art gallery on a post in his yard. I'm like, this is so freaking cool. And and of course Chicago is just, 3 hours from here. And my daughter lives up there. So last summer, I was like, man, I got to go see this thing, And so I went up there, visit my daughter. I was like, we're going to go check out this teeny tiny little art gallery. And I mean, it's like it's under 2 square feet. I mean, it's really very small. And um,
Like a big birdhouse.
yes, yeah, exactly, like a big birdhouse. And I was like, this is super cool. I was like, I absolutely need to do this. I was like, this is right up my everything about this appeals to me. It's an art gallery, it's a project, miniature stuff is cool, things in your yard are cool. It's like everything about this challenge seemed good. Um, so yeah, so I got out my sketchbook and I I drew some little sketches for it. Take my
Yeah.
word for it that it's a bunch of little sketches
Oh, that's so cute.
of just, little
So you
ideas
design,
there.
so you're basically an architect. You can add architect to your
Right.
resume.
But, I had a couple of goals. One is I wanted it to resemble my house here a
Oh,
little bit. So there's an archway um,
yes.
in the mini gallery that has, like, this relief feature around it, and that matches the inside of my house. And I have hardwood floors in here, so I used a linoleum carving tool and cut little grooves in a board, and stained it and sealed it to make it look like the little gallery has a hardwood floor.
Yeah. You did document the building of the gallery on your Instagram. I've seen
True.
it. So anyone who's interested, the links are going to be in the notes below. And it's really fun to see how this thing came together.
Yeah,
It's
I like that video. I'm pretty pleased with it. It's a pinned video, so it's always gonna be
yeah.
right there at the top on the social media. And I'm still pretty pleased with how it turned out. It has little solar powered lights, so it lights up
Oh,
at
wow.
night for several hours. It really looks cool at night. I love how it looks at night. Sometimes I just go out there, I'm like, man, this looks so cool. Um,
So do you have people that just kind of stumble by and like, oh, look at this, or are do you have people that travel specifically to come to the gallery?
Both, more and more of the latter. So of course, originally I live in a cute neighborhood. It's a historic neighborhood. Um, lot of people walking their dogs here. I mean, a lot of people walking their dogs. And so there was a lot of foot traffic already in front of my house. Um, And so it was pretty easy to grab audiences by just putting it there.
Mhm.
Um, because and I put out a dish of water for the dogs so that they stop anyway. Because their dog stops to drink water and they're like, oh, now you're a captive audience. Turn around and look at the art gallery. Um, but um, but as it's getting more of a following on social media, and more, I'm seeing people they'll drive up in their car. The other day,
Art.
4 people got out of their car, they walked across, they checked out the gallery, and they got back in their car and they drove away. So, I am getting more and more people who come specifically to see the gallery, and
Nice.
that's very cool.
Um, and the inaugural exhibition was your own work.
Yes. Yeah, and I was really pleased that I was able to do that because I had been participating off and on with Inktober, which is every October. What's his name? Jason? I don't can't remember his name. Anyway, there's a guy, and he puts together a list of 31 prompts for the month of October. And the idea is just to motivate people to do a little sketch every day, little ink drawing every
Yeah, I've
day.
heard of it.
Yeah, and I think it was in 2020, I guess it was, that I committed and did the whole month. Since then, I've done like on and
One or
off.
two.
And I did them small, and my challenge for myself was I did them just in ink pen. There was no penciled sketch
Mhm.
first. I just drew in ink, so every line was a commitment. Um,
I love that little gallery. And it's just such a wonderful concept, and it looks so great. Um, and I know the most recent exhibition is an oil painter from Montreal, I believe, who
Correct. Yeah,
does
yeah.
these tiny um, paintings. And when this episode airs, by the time you're listening to this, I will be or already will be or about to have an exhibition at this little gallery. So the gallery is called 1624,
Yep,
Gallery
Gallery
16,
1624, yeah.
which is basically your address, right?
Yeah, so the one in Chicago is called Gallery 1619, and that
Okay.
was his address. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, my house number is 5 digits off. I have to call it that because
Yeah.
so there was a very specific reason for calling it
Yeah.
that. It was an homage
Yeah.
to Gallery 1619 in Chicago."
Nice. I'm so grateful that you invited me to do a show at this gallery. Um and an opportunity. I just started a couple of days ago. I just started making the little miniature paintings, and I'm gonna be, posting about them as I go, sort of trying to build up some momentum.
Yeah.
Actually, one of my friends who has a beta, she has several betas, but one of them is going to be in the exhibition. He's a black beta fish, and his name is Darth Beta. And and, so- and
Nice.
she promised to come down. She's in Chicago. She promised to come down and FaceTime me.
Oh,
So
right on.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Yay. Well,
So
be
I'm
sure to
excited
have her
about that.
let me know when she comes so I can say
Yeah,
hi.
I will. Absolutely. As you're talking about all the different things you've done and this gallery, it occurred to me, and maybe it doesn't make any sense, but could this gallery become a traveling gallery?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, it certainly could. Yeah, I hadn't really gone there, but I also don't know what the future holds in store for it. So,
Uh,
but yeah, obviously, it's pretty darn portable, um, in many respects. So yeah, so it or a version of it,
a version of it. Yeah.
could certainly travel, and that would be a hoot. And as I get more and more, have more and more artists who have exhibited in it, then there'll be sort of this curation, of
Yeah.
artists that I could
Yeah.
invite, to circle back and
Yeah.
be part of a traveling
A
version.
traveling version. So what is it like being a gallerist?
Um, it's a hoot. It's really cool, because I didn't really. I mean, I entered this with just like everything. I just was like, aha,
I know
enthusiasm.
that.
That's what I need. There was no real plan or strategy. Um,
There was a
aside
logo.
from
You
Yes,
did.
exactly. Aside from you, though, the other people who've exhibited so far and the other people who've expressed interest are people who've stumbled upon it, online. You know, People reached out on Instagram. They're like, "Hey, I've got some work. Could I do a show?" And I was like, "Well, let me see your stuff, but probably that." So, yeah, it's been fun to work with people. I mean, the young man up in Montreal and Quebec, he's super enthusiastic about this. This is his very first time having an art show, and so being able to work with him and
Mhm.
see him get his name out there and then be on TV in Montreal
Yeah,
even.
I saw
With
that.
it.
I saw that.
Um, yeah, it's very cool.
I've worked in art galleries in Chicago and in the Hamptons and in Manhattan. And there's a big difference between when you walk into a gallery, and there's a certain air about them. And when you start working there, like you have these high expectations, and then you get behind the scene and you realize that in the back, there's just like a person running it, like, by the seat of their pants, like just kind of trying to
Yeah,
make things work. And and you sort of that's the kind of spirit that I think about when you describe all your other businesses. Like, someone else is doing it. It's just a person,
right.
and
Yeah.
so you just do it, and it's kind of like hacking an industry in a way. At least to
Mhm.
me, it feels that way. It's sort of a breaking down this kind of hierarchy, or this sort of like idea that we have about, you know, a gallerist, or, a museum curator, or a
Mhm.
principal of a school, or, any of
Right.
those things. It's just a person.
Yeah.
And, you can just do that.
You're right.
So it's
Yeah,
pretty
like I
great.
said, just taking away the barriers to entry, just be like, "Nope, I'm
Yeah.
just going all in."
Yeah, yeah. And you also teach
I
art?
do teach. Yeah, yeah, when I came back to Springfield and, needed some employment, I thought, "Well, like, I'm still a teacher in there." So I've mostly been substitute teaching, since last school year, and mostly K-5. But, and not just art, but I mean, I
Okay.
do classroom stuff. Right now, I have a 4th grade class. Um,
Um, as a child who was a gifted child yourself, who did not get the kind of stimulation that you needed early on, and as somebody who started a school and believes so much in education, I'm curious, like, what is your philosophy on, young kids and art?
yeah. Um, I mean, with anything with education, I feel like, whether it's with children or adults, is, you have to find that entry point and meet them where they are.
Mm.
Um, And I try to do that with exhibits too, is find a way, for people to spot themselves, for them to have something to grab onto. Because if something's just too unfamiliar, it's hard to get engagement.
Mhm.
People need to see something, little glimmer of something that they recognize,
Yeah.
and understand. Be like, okay, I know what that means. I know what that is. I know how to do that. You know,
Mhm.
um, and so really trying to understand your people, your audience, your students, um, to
So be
to
at their
figure out what,
level.
yeah, to find
Find
to
them.
find their level, to find what are their strengths,
Mhm.
what are their interests, and so I try to, with teaching art, I try to do a nice mix of not making stuff too prescriptive, but also generally not too open-ended because people, not everybody, but a lot of kids and adults tend to approach like artistic endeavors with a certain amount of trepidation, like I'm not really sure what to do, you
Right.
know. And so if you give them enough specific instructions, be like, okay, here's step one, do this,
Mm.
and they like, okay, I can do that, you know. I can trace this and make a circle or whatever it is,
Yeah.
but also I like to make sure that I have opportunities for for the kids who are just going to run with it, you know. And I've had kids, sort of, take an assignment and do it wrong, But it's like I
There's
don't
no wrong.
I don't yeah, I'm not into, trying to steer them back into the lane. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, as long as you're safe, physically safe, as long as my room's not getting destroyed, as long as there's not a huge mess, it's
Yeah.
like it it doesn't have to look anything like what I thought it was going to look like at the
Yeah.
beginning because I just, I want you to have your chance you know, to do your jam and that seems to work out pretty well.
And as a lifelong entrepreneur,
Yeah.
um, what advice would you give someone who's just starting out and is kind of trying to build their own entrepreneurial business?
Yeah.
Get a logo.
Well, yeah, I do still kind of stand by the be enthusiastic and and make a kick-ass logo. Is definitely a good starting point. Um, there certainly is a lot of wisdom, to the idea that being able to have a roof over your head and food to eat is important to you, then it's probably good to have enough funds set aside, to be able to do that for a year without your business making any money,
Mhm.
because if you're planning on like getting a draw from your business really quickly, it's probably not going to work out very well. In my experience, it doesn't work out very well. And in historically, most people will tell you
Yeah.
it doesn't work out very well. Um, but yeah, the other piece though, just like with teaching art, is really figure out who's your customer, and and don't make assumptions about what your customer needs or what your customer wants. Really try to do your research and don't be afraid or don't be ashamed to be like, well, it seemed really cool to me, but turns out nobody wants that,
Nobody wants that.
and so be a little flexible and be like, okay, well, what do they want? And you might have to be, your widget, might look a
Yeah.
lot different than what you thought it was going to do, um, when you first started. But if you really want to make it, you're going to have to kind of give the people what they want to a certain extent.
Final question for you, which is something I like to ask everyone. With all your different businesses and the different industries that you've had a foot in and your current projects, what is your definition of success and how has it changed over time?
Um, I feel like this is gonna sound really trite or something,
It's
but,
it's
um, but I think I don't know, I think I feel successful if I wake up in the morning and I wanna keep doing that, you
the
know?
yeah,
It's like and, I mean, obviously, it's really helpful if it makes money, but, and you can live off of it, but even if it does, if you don't wake up in the morning and be like, "This is yeah, I'm glad I'm doing this," then you gotta rethink it.
that's absolutely perfect. I think almost everyone that I've asked has given me some version of that, but no one has put it quite so succinctly.
Mhm.
So I actually really love it. Definition of being successful is waking up in the morning and wanting to continue to do it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's really great.
yeah,
That's really
and
great.
I've been fortunate to have that experience in a lot of different
Yeah,
avenues of my life,
yeah.
so
And continue to. Thank you. So can I ask you one more thing?
yes.
I've been wanting to ask for a long time. I I was told that the exclamation point in your name is
Mhm.
actually part of your legal name. Is
It's
that
true.
true? It's
Yes,
true.
yes, yep. Yeah, I added that, in February of 1980.
Oh my
um
God.
Yeah, so it wasn't not legally, but I added it to my name in February of 1980. So I was 14 years old, 14 and a half. Um, and I added it. I was at a junior achievement function out at the mall here in Springfield. Um, and we had those "Hello, my name is" badges, the little sticker. Hello, my name is. Um, and so I wrote, hello, my name is Seth, exclamation point, because just I'm kind of a stickler for punctuation. And so, you know, and I was like, I'm not going to put a period. So I wrote the exclamation point after it. Hello, my name is Seth, and then I looked at it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's staying. I still have that name sticker, by the way. I still
Oh my
have,
God. Yeah.
but yeah, so ever since February of 1980, um, so that's what, 46 years. Um, yeah. So but I did finally, like on the 30th anniversary of it or something, I went to the courthouse and made it legal because I was like, I'm not, been doing it for 30 years. I'm
Yeah.
not giving it up. So, yep, it's really there.
It's for me, like, even without having talked to you this much, it's always been sort of underlying part of your identity
Yeah.
as like, because there's just so much that tied to a name when it's that unique.
Mhm.
Like that is something you do on purpose.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
is an intentional that is an intentional thing that you added to your name that um sort of underlines to me optimism.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had people say to me things like, they were like, I wondered about that for a while, but now that I've met you, I can see why it's there.
Exactly. Seth, thank you so much. This was really fun.
Certainly. It has
And
been. Oh, thank you.
yes, and thank you again for letting like inviting me to have an exhibition at Gallery 1624. The gallery has its own website, which we will have in the comments, and an Instagram account with lots of updates and really fun behind the scenes.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, if you Google Seth exclamation point Leary, you're gonna get a bunch of stuff and I'll be the only one.
yeah,
Um, there aren't too many Seth Learys anyway, but I'm the only one with the exclamation point, so that'll help. So it's really hard to not find me. You'd really have to not want to find me to not find me.
like so far, I am the only Hava Gurevich. That if you Google Hava Gurevich, I will come up, and when all
Mhm.
the links are exhausted of my name, then it will start showing you results for my twin sister and then or my dad and or my dad. So,
Fantastic.
all right. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. Have a great rest of your day, and
Thank
I'm
you.
excited for your show.
I am too. Thanks. Thanks again for tuning in. That's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please help us out by leaving a review, a comment, subscribing, sharing it with your friends. Every little bit helps, and I really appreciate it. And before we go, I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor and producer, Art Storefronts. If you've been thinking about turning your art into a real business or just want to level up your online presence, now is honestly the best time, especially with the holiday selling season coming up in Q4. I can't stress this enough. Art Storefronts isn't just a website builder. They're a full-blown partner for your art business. They give you the tools, education, and marketing support to actually make sales, not just sit online and hope. And if you're unsure whether your art will sell, no worries. Just head to artstorefronts.com and sign up for a demo. They'll give you a free art review and a marketing assessment of your art to show you exactly what's possible. So go to artstorefronts.com, tell them Hava sent you, and I'll catch you on the next episode.